live. The recording is going. We are doing another one of my RPG social hours, or whatever you want to call them. And today I have those people. I've got Val and Curtis from Roll Initiative and Emma Hansen, right?
Mm-hmm.
From Flumphs and Trenchcoat.
From Emma Hansen.
She keeps changing her Twitter handle. I don't know what to call her. I know she's on a couple of different streams, but introduce yourselves. That way everyone knows who you are and where you're from.
Who's first?
I'm Curtis. I'm from Roll Initiative. Obviously, I'm rocking all the swag. Yeah, we started doing our videos, I think, in December now. It's been a few months. We basically just have been having fun with this community and happy to be here.
Fun's the important thing. Fun's why we're all here, right?
I'm Valerie from Roll Initiative. I do the same stuff, so that.
You do the same stuff, but more importantly.
Yes,
better.
But better.
And I'm Emma, also known as Flumphs in a Trenchcoat. And I do a lot of stuff. I talk about a lot of nerdy stuff on my Twitter. That's important.
That's what I do. That's where everyone knows me from. I'm that nerdy guy from Twitter. I do other things, but apparently Twitter is the one medium where I excel because I can just post garbage at 3 a.m. and by the time I wake up, the internet has taken hold of it.
Everyone loves it.
You do like cool real stuff though, with like rockets and
so
real cool life.
I'm Seal. I'm OneCritWonder or Bounty Hunter, or I've got 400 screen names across the internet, but I'm in the real world. I'm in the military, and the Air Force decided to let me play with explosives. And more importantly, recently they let me take on a special duty at Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is the Western Range spaceport. So turns out putting things into space usually involves a lot of explosives. So I work safety on making sure that NASA and SpaceX don't kill everyone, and I got this sweet hoodie for it. It's on the side.
And they let this guy do that.
Low bar of entry over there.
All I did was click a button on the internet, and I got an email saying you've been selected. So here we are. But yeah, I make actual play videos. Just me and a bunch of nerds off of Reddit playing D&D. I do Roll High Don't Die, which is like 3 to 10 minute, like pose a question or a topic. What's your favorite campaign setting, or what was a story of one of your character deaths? Kind of like videos to get RPG conversations going. And then those have been the things that have blown up the most on Twitter, are my random polls and my random conversation starters, just to be like, describe your party with 3 emojis, or describe your last campaign only using a song title. Like that kind of garbage gets way more traction than my like, hey guys, I have this actual RPG question. Let's talk about the actual, like, how do you balance for blank? Nope, nobody cares.
Yeah, they just want pictures of my dogs.
Yeah, describe your last group using only anime scenes, though. The internet's got that.
Well, that's a good one. That's a good one.
But
face.
like I said, this isn't so much an interview as it's just random open forum talking. So I got a dry erase board over there with a couple of like conversation starter topics and questions, but we'll start with the easy, like, what was everyone's first experience with RPGs? Did you start with D&D? Did you start as a DM, or were you a player? So we'll start on the Roll Initiative side and go from there.
You started before I did, so you go first.
Okay. Jesus, when did I start? So I met some guys in like the 9th grade that turned out to be really good friends that I was friends with for a long time after that. And every Saturday they would go to one of the guys' brother's house in Tempe. And we were like 14, 15 at the time. So it was like, my parents were, oh, you can't go to a 21-year-old's apartment every Saturday. What's wrong with you?
You definitely should.
And I was like, no, but I want to pretend to be an elf. And so we just started doing that. And like every weekend we'd go and we'd hang out at Chuck's place and we'd play D&D. I think the first time we ever played, we didn't even go over there. We just went to this other guy's apartment and like made characters, and we were hobgoblins. And he's like, okay, you guys are hobgoblins and you're approaching an elf camp. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And at some point, I swear to God, it ended up with us having killed a couple of hobgoblins. Remember, we were 14. Arranged them in like not the best positions with like swords in places they shouldn't be. And yeah, so that
Sounds
was
like my first game then.
so now we do like real serious D&D with like drama and voices and stuff.
Voices and everything.
Back then, it was just swords and butts.
That's the best you can hope for, though, because that sounds like a murder mystery podcast just waiting to happen.
What happened here? Go.
That was our we wanted the guards to
What
stumble
happened to
across
these young
them.
boys?
Oh my God, what are these guys doing?
My first experience is I was in college and I met some people in college and they were looking at game books. I'm like, check out these nerds. They're like, oh, why don't you come play with us? And I'm like, yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, okay.
But then I did do that. And I went and it was like captivatingly fun. And I was embarrassed by how much I was into it and how and how much I enjoyed it. And I'm like, we're going to do this for the rest of our lives, right? And they're like, oh, absolutely we are. And I didn't know how to do anything, but I, got a theater background, so I just kind of ran with it. And it eventually devolved into full costumed LARPing. So it's a slippery slope.
I haven't actually LARPed yet, but my last one of these was with the D4 D&D group, and they're a group out of Atlanta, and they're all like into film production and LARPing and stuff, and they LARP and they LARP like balls to the wall. And I was like, well, all right then. I got hard enough time convincing board game people to like take it to the next step to be D&D people, and being military, I move around a ton. So just about the time I get like a solid D&D group, it's time to move, or half my group moves. And so then I, okay, who wants to play Settlers of Catan? Okay, now that we've played 4 games of Catan, who wants to try this other thing? Okay, I got him to try D&D. Maybe I can get him to try Star Wars. Oh, no, somebody moved. All right, who wants to play Lords of Waterdeep?
That's a good game, though.
It is a good game. And the expansion.
So I started like less than a year ago, actually.
Why
Yeah.
are you on the stream with us?
I don't know. I'm asking myself the same question. Like every day, I'm like, why do people like what I'm doing? I don't know what I'm doing. So I was at the time seeing this guy, and he had been playing D&D for like ever. And one day, he texted me and was like, "Hey, we need a player tonight for this game called Dungeons and Dragons." And I'm like, "The thing that like the people on Stranger Things play?" So he was like, "Sure." And I joined. I made this tiefling warlock pirate that I still love, and I'm just waiting to use her again. And I was so awkward that first game. I think back on it and it keeps me up at night. Like I can't get over how awkward I was. Like, "Hello, milady, may I order your finest ale?" What are you doing? So that was my first experience. And I'm such an introvert, but I fell in love with it. So I stayed doing that. And then my students found out that I was playing D&D because I had ordered some dice and they arrived at my school. And I was like opening them up and they're like, "Those are RPG dice. Do you like play D&D?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I totally do." And then I started an after school club for them, which was really cool. And that's been fun.
That's awesome.
Now I do all sorts of, like, I basically was like, I'm diving in head first to this. I'm just doing it.
Well, this is me now. I'm going to do all the things.
I'm doing all the things. I don't know how, but I'm doing them.
But now you're like the coolest teacher of all.
Yeah, I got a lot of street cred with that. It's been good.
Just keep accidentally ordering dice to the school and you'll be set.
Yeah, exactly. Now I have like 100 sets of dice, so we're doing good.
I think I'm only in the 30s, but that's because I buy more books than dice because I'm weird.
I love the books.
I actually was around nerd things for much longer than I had been D&Ding. I didn't actually get to play D&D until I was in the military because I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. And so, like, not exactly nerd central. But middle school, people got me into the Pokemon games, and Pokemon games led to Pokemon cards, and Pokemon cards led to, hey, there's this other card game, Magic, and Magic led me to Wizards of the Coast website, which led me to like, okay, I'm hanging out after school and have nothing to do, and I'm on the school computer, so I'll go to the Wizards forums, and that led to reading about Magic, and then bumping into D&D. But obviously, I wasn't going to buy the books because I didn't have people to play with. So I found like freeform areas where I could like. It was. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but there was like, it wasn't D&D, but it was freeform RP play by post, and then that led to me getting into finding D&D stuff, but I still didn't have the books, and like downloading PDFs wasn't a thing at this point. So like all I knew about D&D was third person across the internet, people being like, oh, well, you just do this and that, and then you got a character and you knock yourself out. But I joined the military, I did basic training, and once I got out of basic training, I got to my first tech school, and somebody had the books, and oh, it was 3rd edition was out and new, and you want to play D&D? I would totally DM a game. Let's do the thing. And then fast forward like a week later, and one of the guys in the group ran into the front desk thing. I'll try to keep military jargon out of this stream, but basically stole the mic from the front desk that, you know, was used for emergencies, and did a, if anyone wants to play D&D, get to the first floor conference room right now, across, you know, 3 floors of a military tech school. And like, next thing you know, like 30 awkward people showed up to like watch us, not necessarily play, but to just be like, what are these nerds doing? But I still have a couple of pictures of like all of 3.E or 3.X rather, because I think 3.5 was just coming out, spread across this conference room, and it was a total mess. And of course it was 3.5, so there was a million options, and we didn't just stick to dwarf, elf, human. Like one person had to be a pixie, and somebody wanted to be a, you know, bugbear, and so like we had monster races, and it was just a nightmare. And we didn't even do anything. We did the stereotypical everyone meets in a tavern and you start a tavern fight thing, and the dwarf was led into an alley to buy some sweet wares from that one guy wearing a questionable coat, and like got blinded and beat up, and, you know, fast forward to people slipping and vomit in the bar fight and burning handsing each other. So science.
Like pretty much like everybody's first D&D experience is
Yeah.
roughly the same. It always ends up in some sort of fight that shouldn't have happened.
Yep. But that clusterfuck of a group kind of led to making friends with a couple of those people. And then when we met again at our next tech school, because we were all going to the same secondary training, we got into Star Wars D20, and that was a whole nother adventure into, I want to be a guy who dual wields lightsabers. Okay, well, I want 2 blaster rifles, but also force powers. Here we go again.
Blaster rifle.
I think we've got the Star Wars one over there somewhere. I've got 3.5 right here, and I was digging for my bag of magic cards while you were talking about magic. It's like,
Bag doesn't do it justice.
Oh
It's a suitcase full of magic cards.
my god.
I haven't played Magic in about a decade, but I still
They'll
get
pick it
people
up.
to-
They'll pick it up
Yeah,
again.
right.
You're gonna be
I
tempted.
know.
Don't do it.
I played it in tech school, and then it was a really easy thing to do while I was deployed the first time, because getting one person who has the same time off as you to play Magic is much easier than I need like 4 people for a 4-hour D&D game when each of us only has 1 day off a week to do all of the things. So I started playing a little bit in the desert. Plus, it's easy to be like, hey, wizards, like we're in Afghanistan right now, and I got like 50 people interested in playing Magic, and I'd be like, fuck yeah, and send you a crate of cards. They don't do that for D&D shit. But in the green screen behind me, which is everything I own in boxes with a green cloth taped to it, is all of my Magic cards. The Pokemon cards are still in there too. And then y'all have seen pictures of my shelf. Well, I have to strategically spread out, like, okay, this deep of RPG books across each box, and then lighter stuff on top of it, because on my last move, 3.5, I only had about half of 3rd edition in one box and the other half in another, and both boxes broke trying to pick them up.
easily.
That has been
Oh,
the
R.I.P.
moving existence. Every single 3.5 book, including some of the weird off-brand ones like the Book of Erotic Fantasy, and you put those in a box.
You don't have that book, Emma?
No, I missed that one.
Yeah.
There were magical nipple rings. Just throwing that out there.
I'm gonna need to hunt this one
Third
down.
edition was weird.
eBay that.
Yeah.
Third edition had splat books for everything, and I mean everything.
Everything. That's kind of what I think people's biggest beef about it was. Like, I feel universally people liked the play system of third edition, but the fact that it was before the era that you could get stuff online and you could literally drop like $800 on books and not have all of them was kind of a barrier of entry.
And it didn't matter what you were doing and how many books you had. You would show up to a game and somebody would show up with a third-party book that you had never heard before and be like, I want to play
God.
this.
Now I have to buy that one too.
And I'm glad that 4th edition came out. You know, crucify me for it, but I'm glad 4th edition came out because it took 4th edition coming out before I was like, okay, RPGs are a thing that I could be the DM for, because I did not want to spend 15 hours of prep for a 4-hour game at level 1. And from there, 3.x just went exponentially worse. And so as we're now in 5th edition, like if we wanted to play right now, I wouldn't need to prep. I have enough stuff in the back of my mind that I could just play a 5e game right now. But with 3.5, for every group I can review all the character sheets in 5e, I could do one character to be like, yeah, I think your skills are right for 3.5.
I got dice right here. Let's go.
Okay. I have no dice. I will get my phone app.
It was a
dead.
5. That's not great.
Emma, have you only played 5e or have you played any other systems?
No, I've only played 5e. That was the game that they were playing that I hopped into. I've looked at the other books and got overwhelmed very quickly. But from what I've heard is that 5e is like more accessible to everybody. Like anybody who wants to play, you can just hop in. And I had no experience with any tabletop role playing at all. I mean, I've been a nerd since I was born, but I was like born in a computer, so it was fine. I was able to just get into it ish. But some of the older editions seem super complicated.
They are.
They are, absolutely.
Have you considered any non-D&D RPGs, though? Has anyone ever tried to get you into, like, Numenera or Monster Hearts or any...
It's really funny that you should say that. I was just talking with a friend of mine earlier about... he's thinking of running a Monster Hearts game, so that'll be exciting. And there's a couple other games that I have heard of that I would love the opportunity to play, so I'm not beholden to 5e.
Anything in particular?
I really want to play Vampire the Masquerade, real bad. And
Hit me up.
He's got the black
20th anniversary edition.
That's so big.
It's upside down, by the way.
There you go.
That's so pretty.
Yeah, it's like faux leather bound and everything.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's
She
beautiful.
She spent a lot of time as a vampire.
Yeah, it was not Boffer Larp. It was Parlor Larp. So vampire, werewolf, changeling.
That's amazing.
I've been hearing a lot about changing recently, and I don't know why it's making such a push, but I know absolutely nothing about it. Like, at least with with Vampire the Masquerade, I haven't played it, but you go to a freeform role-playing forum, you're going to see some vampire talk, but I know nothing about changeling, so I don't even know what it is compared to vampire.
It depends on what. It's all fey creatures, but how you play those fey creatures and how they came to be really depends on what edition you're playing. And I think the reason that you are seeing a lot about it right now is because there is a company, like a third-party company, that now has access to the Changeling franchise that is creating their own thing. And I think they just put out their alpha test of the Changeling system, and they've already done vampire, they've already done werewolf, but now they're doing changeling too, which is actually my first LARP. I didn't even start with playing vampire. I started playing the old school changeling.
All right. How does How did you get introduced to the LARP stuff? Was that just something that you wandered into, or?
I started dating somebody, and we met at a nightclub, and I remember him going like, I have something to tell you. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'm a gamer. I play RPGs, and I'm like, oh my god, me too. What are the odds? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm a LARPer. I'm like, ooh.
Ew.
Gross.
I thought we were talking like Baldur's Gate here, but
and I'm like, oh, LARPing, because I don't know what I was imagining LARPing was. Just like a lot of people throwing beanbags at each other, and just getting flop sweat as they tried to run around a field. But he took me to one, and I saw it, and I'm like, costumes, backstabbing, like sinister laughter. Like, this is for me. I could do this. So I just kind of dived in head first, because if you give me an event to wear a costume to, I'm going to wear a costume. So.
I feel that so hard. I do.
We should have LARPed this, because I've got a whole crate full of costumes still that we could have.
Literally right there.
Just done
not planned this well.
My only options are like nerd get up and like military uniform. I don't have anything cool. I've been saying for years.
Together somehow.
Yeah. I've been saying for years that I was going to do like obviously Mandalorian armor is a big thing, but the Fallout New Vegas, the
Rangers,
the Rangers with the LAPD vest and everything. I've always wanted to do the like full on duster coat LAPD Ranger like cosplay, but
that'd be slick.
I don't even get to go to Comic-Con this year because I'll be in a combat zone instead. But
yeah,
that's lame.
But I mean, you get to do like real life LARPing.
Yeah.
Live action, real life.
No one's going to put a little orange tag on the 2 weapons I'll be dragging around for a year at least. So, I won the Comic-Con Spinning Wheel of Death raffle only to have to turn my tickets back in. So it double sucks because not only did I steal somebody else's spot, I got in and then had to get a refund. So it's.
Oh, that's horrible.
That's a terrible tragedy.
What's that that Apocalypse LARP that's out by him?
It's all over the place. Dystopia Rising is a post-apocalypse setting, which I don't know much about because they don't have one here in Arizona because it's too hot 90% of the time to go outside. But that's like full-on boffer LARP, camping, Nerf guns.
Wasteland LARPing is crazy. That's like a whole subculture niche right there.
The problem with it, I would think, is like she's saying, like, when it comes to the actual wasteland, you're not going to want to go outside dressed up like an LAPD duster ranger. Because I lived in Tucson for like 3 years, and Phoenix and Tucson have mostly the same climate. Tucson gets a little more of the like monsoon season come that time of year, but it ain't fun. And I mean, it's a dry heat though. No. Like,
it's just hot. You know what else is a dry heat? Your oven.
Yeah. To be fair though, so I grew up in the South. I had, like humidity and uncomfortable heat on lock. I went to Texas. Okay, this is a little worse, but like it's still humid heat. I went to Arizona. Okay, dry heat. Both suck. Got it. And then I got orders to Korea and I was like, I've been to Arizona. I've been to Texas. I can handle both the kinds of heat. No, Korea's got its old thing going. And then so does Qatar, because Qatar is 128 degrees in the summer, but it's also humid as hell with no wind. So like 3 o'clock in the morning, 95 degrees, 0 wind, 96% humidity. And you're just like, why do people choose to live here? They have oil money. Like, move.
Get a steam room. People pay good money for that at the gym. Like,
yeah, right.
Clears your pores out. You just need to walk around with some eucalyptus all the time.
That oil money can get you a lot. All the eucalyptus you can slap yourself with.
So I got a question, Emma. Since you're the newer of the 3 of us, or the 4 of us, how did you go from, okay, I'm totally new, I'll give that a shot, to like, yeah, sure, I'll jump on a stream and webcam myself and do this nerdy thing, and like, how do you go from like accidentally getting caught getting dice at school to like, I'll be in a weekly live stream process? What was that jump?
Oh, that's a really good question. And every day I'm like, how is this? How did I get here? How did this happen so quickly? Um, so when I mean, I've always been around like around nerd stuff. I grew up, my formative years were in Hawaii, so I was already surrounded by Japanese and nerd culture. Um, and fast forward to um, after college, a friend of mine was playing World of Warcraft, and I was like, "This is cool. I like video games, and now I can play with friends. This is great." And and then my friends, they were all streamers, so then I started streaming everything that I was doing. So I was already like kind of used to doing that, and then um, online gaming has become so toxic that I slowly started pulling myself out of it. And when
Yes.
I, yeah, it's awful. And so then I found D&D, and it's like nerd stuff. I can play with friends from all over the world, and people are nice here, and people don't like the mean people. So it's like I finally found my nerd home. It's only taken me like 31 years to do it, but and when I do something, I just I do
All
it.
in. Yeah.
I'm not going to half-ass anything in my life. I will whole ass all things.
Whole
So
ass
Ass or no
nerddom.
ass.
whole ass or no ass, exactly. So I just dove in, and I'm just hustling. That's all I'm doing. I'm just gonna keep
Really
throwing
are.
stuff
Like,
out there.
you're the new person who only has 1 year under her belt, and you're doing like 10 times as much D&D stuff as we are.
I'm
And
like
and that's
really.
why I asked the question because I've been Ding for like, what year is it? So,
Yeah.
20 years of nerd stuff, and I'm just now like, I guess I could like point a camera at myself and talk on YouTube, and I mean, even my streams, I haven't been doing like face cams and crazy voices. They're very low key, like just scratching that itch level like streams. The game is the point, not the stream. We haven't been catering to the stream aspect. It's a game that I'm playing that I happen to just hit, stream on OBS on the side. But like to see someone who is so new to it just be like already so far ahead of me into just whole assing the nerddom, as you said, I was
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, let your freak flag fly, Emma.
Oh yeah, I'm doing that. I'm doing it hardcore. And I think also when I was younger, I I wrote all of these silly ass fantasy stories with,
Awesome.
Who
sword
does
fighting
that?
and dragons and like all sorts of stuff. And I was reading all sorts of fantasy novels, and and I don't know, it just all like came together. It's like I've been waiting for this my whole life, and now I'm here.
Yeah,
So,
that's your.
from
That's,
an RPG standpoint, obviously fantasy is the thing that most everyone has experience with, but is there any genres that y'all, open to everyone, is there any genres that y'all are like chomping at the bit to play? Like, oh my god, if I could get in a cyberpunk group or a steampunk group, is there anything that, like, aside from fantasy, which is a given, what else excites y'all in terms of role play?
I am a huge sci-fi nerd, like even more than fantasy. I'm an enormous fantasy nerd. Like I have swords and D&D books and all of that stuff. But sci-fi is my jam. Like if I could find, I don't even know what to play for sci-fi. Like I
Well,
know,
I
sci-fi
don't.
is such a broad topic. Are we talking like sci-fi, like near future Blade Runner type stuff? Or are we talking like space opera, Star Wars, Star Trek type sci-fi, or just
more,
all of it?
I think more of the space opera style stuff, like you know, Star Wars, Halo, that kind of stuff. I would love to play that, and I have never found a system or people to play it with.
I'm gonna. It'll be like next year, late winter, before I'm looking to do some more stuff because my days are numbered before I get out of here now. But I have stuff I'm trying to do in the Cipher system, stuff I'm trying to do in Genesis, which is Star Wars Fantasy Flight games minus the Star Wars, and then chat's talking about it, but Stars Without Number, and then there's one other system that I want to do, and they're all cyberpunk or sci-fi. And so
Cool.
I'll be looking to do a couple of one shots to just like training wheels the systems, but if you got like 4 hours, I do a lot of one shots, so I'll drag you into a one shot to be like, let's do some Shadow of the Beanstalk, Genesis or something.
I'm in.
And I think the futuristic sci-fi cyberpunk style is probably what I've always been looking for. Like my holy grail game is Shadowrun, and I've gotten to play 30 minutes of it because the character creation process was 4 hours, and then we played 30 minutes and somebody had to go, and it never happened again. So it's like I've been waiting my entire life to play Shadowrun.
I've been waiting to play Shadowrun since before I played D&D. I heard about Shadowrun on the forums, of course, and got to read about it, and I've wanted to play it, and I too have played one game of Shadowrun because the guy said, hey, we're going to do a one shot, let's do Shadowrun, the beginner back of the book adventure. Cool. And I was expecting him show up, hand us all pre-gens, and play some Shadowrun. Nope, he showed up with one copy of the book and is like, okay, all 6 of you are going to build characters now. And had I not acquired a second copy of the book to throw up on the TV so that 2 people could be looking at charts at the same time, like, it would not have gone as smoothly as it went terribly. Because after 5 hours, people started like inventing, well, my cat's on fire, so I'm going to go now. And we didn't get to play. But at this point, I've been looking at ways that I can hack Shadowrun. So Genesis, being like I said, the system neutral Star Wars Fantasy Flight games, I'm going to just take all the fantasy rules and all of the cyberpunk rules and smash them together and see how they work and play Shadowrun without needing 400 D6s and 6 hours of reading about the Matrix.
The Shadowrun character creation puts 3rd edition to shame.
Oh yeah, and 3rd edition was intense.
Yeah.
And then, and I guess on to Emma, aside from fantasy, anything crazy that you've always wanted to try?
Okay, so I actually had the opportunity on Variant Roles to hop into a Cypher System game, which was a lot of fun. Because I was playing a hacker, and it was great. I grew up watching sci-fi, so I was like, I'm living the dream right now. This is fantastic. But literally anything gothic is what, like, I want that so badly. I want to play like a really, like, I need vampires. Give me that
Some
supernatural,
Van
that
Helsing.
like, please, that's what I want. So that's probably the avenue that I'd really like to go down.
There's a couple of different systems that do that really well though, and then with systems like the generic systems, Cypher and Genesis and Fate, you can make it work, but there's definitely systems keyed straight to that, depending on which kind of gothic you were looking for.
All of it. All the gothic. Every
All of
version
them.
of gothic that you can give me.
World of Darkness. We'll send you the book.
I feel like Call of Cthulhu usually has some pretty good like gothic overtones to it, and I do love a good Call of Cthulhu game.
I've been wanting to play that for about as long as I've been wanting to play Shadowrun, but it's another one of those things where like tone is important, and getting people into D&D games is hard enough because I can normally get the like casual board game groups around whatever middle of nowhere place I get stationed at. I can convince board gamers to try D&D if I go, hey, it's not actually that nerdy, like let's just, somebody bring over a case of beer, we'll make dick jokes and fight dragons, cool, right? It's not as nerdy as you think it is. And so I get them into D&D, but you have to, everyone at the table needs to be in a Call of Cthulhu mood, I think. If you have 4 people who are serious and one guy who is, acting like I do on Twitter, it's going to pull out of the immersion constantly.
Well, if you guys are feeling it, I do have a Call of Cthulhu adventure already written that I've only ever run half of because the group was not feeling super dark. And so there was a lot of like giggling and everyone's character was on opium. And I'm like,
I was not on opium.
Yeah, he was a creepy drifter in a poncho, and everyone else was like hamming it up after I'd said, you guys really need to, like, this is super dark and some horrible things are going to happen. So if you could not, like, move this off, that would be super cool. And then they just
into it. Please let's make this happen. 100%. I'm
So,
ready.
I only have until like mid-May, but
We got a lot of games to get in.
then next
Oh,
year,
God.
sign me up for anything. I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna have like 2 weeks of R&R that I'll be hanging out with the missus and our newborn, who won't be newborn at the time. It'll be exciting. But then I'm definitely gonna be like, okay, you guys totally screwed me like the last 2 years. Time for vacation.
a D&D vacation,
All the games.
gamecation.
Gamecation, yes.
So we talked about playing Call of Cthulhu with a friend online recently, and he's like, okay, we'll do it, but you got to check out the new edition. And the new edition was like only on this PDF that he had, and we downloaded it, and it is unintelligible. So if you're going to play Call of Cthulhu, go back and play the one that's basically like 3rd edition reskinned.
Yes, it's
Okay.
20 based instead of, like, I don't even know what system they were using for that, but it was just a bunch of hieroglyphics on tables, and
It's so
Can't do that.
complicated.
I got it. You go mad just reading the book, so you're at a
Yes.
good place when you
That's
start
what gets-
actually playing.
it gets you in the theme of the game. You start looking into the void.
Perfect.
I'm trying to find it.
I'm making notes as we talk about things, and so I keep catching myself like, oh no, nobody's talking. I'm looking down at the chat. Chat was talking about the dice in Star Wars RPG. Have either parties messed with that RPG at all? Do you know anything about it?
I've played like 2 different iterations of a Star Wars RPG, so
The Fantasy Flight one specifically.
if it's the most recent one, probably not.
Okay. So the interesting thing about that system is it doesn't use the same RPG dice because, of course, Fantasy Flight's going to get another $13 out of you somehow.
Right.
But the dice that it uses, you have D8s, D12s, and D6s, and you have good dice and bad dice. And what you do is your skill in that particular field based off of how many skill points you have for whatever you're doing, and then your characteristic or your ability modifier, basically. That determines how many good dice you roll. How difficult the thing is and any negative factors determine how many bad dice you roll. And then once you know your number, you put them all in your hand and you throw them out there, and they cancel each other out. So the good dice have successes on them, which are canceled out by failures on the bad dice. And the good dice have advantage, which are canceled out by threats on the bad dice. But what that means is you can have situations where you fail a thing, but you have an advantage, or you succeed in a thing, but you have a threat. So if we're playing D&D and you were jumping over a hole, the DM sets the DC at 12, and you roll your athletics to go jump that pit. You either roll 12 or higher, or you don't make it. So one of two things happens. You make it over the pit, or you don't. And then the DM can decide, okay, well, you rolled an 11, so I'll let you make a dex save to like grab the edge or that kind of stuff. But it's very binary, pass or fail. But with the Star Wars dice or the Genesis dice or whatever, you can succeed, but then have threats. And the DM gets to go, okay, you jumped the pit, but you also rolled 3 threats, and I need to do something with these 3 threats. So what I'm going to do is have the edge that you landed on start to collapse. So you roll forward, but then the pit is now 2 feet wider because the side collapsed, and now the next person making the jump needs to roll an additional bad die. And so you can affect the narrative in ways like that. And it also works for combat. You can shoot at a guy and miss him, but get all of these advantages and then go, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend these advantages to give a boost to the next person, because I shot at the stormtrooper and I missed him, but he turned around looking for where it came from. So now the next person gets another boost die and has a greater chance of hitting him. So you have 2 axes, pass, fail, and then multiply, divide, basically. And it makes for very interesting stuff because as a DM, as much as I hate to admit it, I like when players try to bullshit their way into getting something. And so I like when I have the players looking at the outcomes to their dice and trying to come up with narrative reasons why they should get A, more dice for their pool, and B, get to use the things that they have rolled. And in D&D, yeah, I have a rogue that every time he does anything, he needs to tell me that walking behind that telephone pole should have totally broke line of sight, so he should get advantage and sneak attack on his next attack. Okay. But with these dice, you get so many more like, okay, well, I just rolled 3 advantage. What I want is, maybe there's explosive barrels behind the stormtrooper or X, Y, and Z. And you get a lot more like player buy-in to the story because they're trying to get something good for themselves, but like they're inserting themselves into the story to be like, okay, well, I should have an advantage on this computer check because the last time that we were doing something, it was also an Imperial system, and so I should have been used to their Yahoo login by now or whatever, right? And so I love the dice system, as weird as it is for people to come from normal polyhedrals to the like throw everything in a pile and figure out if you won. It's weird for people, but I nerd out about the dice system and I love it a lot.
It sounds like a more formal version of Exalted, which I think it is based on D10s, but you get either more dice or I forget what the actual bonus is. The more narratively or the more excitingly you narrate your action. So if it's just like, I shoot the guy, like, okay, that's just a regular dice. But if you say, okay, well, I'm going to run up onto the wall and I'm going to like flip over, I'm going to shoot down onto his head, and then you get like a +3 bonus or something like that. That sounds like a more formalized version of something that's kind of, up in the air.
Isn't there a pirate game that does that too?
Yeah, 7th Sea does that as well.
7th Sea has been on my like pile of things to check out for a while, but I haven't spent money on it because I knew I was leaving and I didn't want to add to the pile for systems I wasn't even going to get to play. I was going to stick to adding to the pile of systems I already knew. So, those.
Well, and I like the idea that there's like, that seems like more realistic than some of the encounters and situations that can occur in D&D. I know that like a friend of mine started telling me about Dungeon World, and I don't really understand. I like haven't taken the book and like read through it at all, but I like the idea of pulling the players in for the narrative and actually having them invest in it. So something that I started doing with my D&D games is that I started asking players like to describe some of the things that they're seeing or how something plays out based either on their dice rolls or on just the fact that like I could see them sort of starting to lose it. So I'd pull them back in by saying, okay, so you round the corner, what do you see? You tell me. Right. And going from there. And I have tried to, instead of having it a flat, you succeed or you fail, I've been trying to give conditions on it. Like, yeah, you fire the arrow, but you get dust in your eye when you do it. Which then, adds on like that will add another result later on in the encounter when it comes back around to their turn.
I think that can be kind of important in systems like D&D where you have a difficulty class. Even AC is just a DC that you're trying to meet, right? I think it's important sometimes to describe things different ways so that people aren't defeated when they're missing. So you rolled a 7. Okay, well, it's easy to just be like, you missed the guy. But sometimes it's important to, as the GM, describe it as, oh, well, he held up his shield and your arrow went in his shield. Like, make it more about the scene instead of just like, you sucked, next turn.
But I try really hard to do that. I think that's like my biggest weakness as a DM is I always forget to do that.
Yeah.
But like, you need to make your failures as cool and interesting as your successes. Like, you rolled a 20, awesome. Describe this crazy like double front flip spear jab to the nuts kind of thing. But in the same breath, like if you roll a 1, it's not just, okay, you miss really bad, go even further. Like, what happens? You eat it, you roll across the floor and the guy like bashes you across the face. And
yeah, what were you doing that was going to be awesome until you fucked it up?
Exactly. And that way everybody can still enjoy when there's a failure. And it's not just like hoping for success and that's the entire game.
I think it's really important to teach new players that it's okay to fail, and it's actually sometimes really fun to fail because you can fail upwards and get something really cool out of it too.
That's why I like that Star Wars game so much, is the falling forward. And DM behind the screens in the Twitch chat right now, and he's making a comment about it 100% not being up to the DM, that the players can absolutely contribute to the interesting failure narrative. And that's what I like about Star Wars, is it gets the players thinking about that. But describing things like you were talking about, Curtis, can get players into describing their own failures in interesting ways, instead of just getting frustrated at having missed a third round in a row and, you know, passing the turn. And yeah, it pads out the combat time a little more. But if everyone's having fun, even if they're failing by describing the cool, terrible way that they messed up, or the cool thing that they were trying to do when they failed, you can have a better experience, which is the point.
Yep, totally agree. There's so many situations where I realize that I dropped that ball and like 3 or 4 turns will pass and it's just like, roll dice, okay, you hit, oh shit, got to get back in the mindset and go back into like, you know, narrating stuff and really giving them like high energy, like stand up and act out what's happening in the battlefield just to get them engaged. And then that kind of helps loosen people up. Because our current group that we're playing with is a bunch of people that like never played D&D before. It's basically me and Valerie with experience, and then some friends from work that got interested through either Critical Role, or one of them I literally just brought in to play D&D one day.
Hey, you.
Yeah. You're playing D&D.
Yeah.
And so when they started out, like everybody starts out, you know, they're nervous. They don't know when to speak up. They don't want to overstep their bounds.
They don't want to mess up and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly. And so over time, by playing as ridiculously as possible, like I am all about making a fool out of myself.
Sword sounds with his mouth. That's his thing.
For the sake of entertainment. And I feel like it loosens people up. Like, this guy's being ridiculous. Okay, I can be 10% as ridiculous and have more fun and not be the stupidest guy at this table.
That's one of the things that scared me, I guess, when I first started, was I'm not a social butterfly, and so I was involved with folks that were much more like open to just, you know, make a weird pixie character and flirt with everyone in the group. And I was over here like worried that I did not have the right number of sneak attack dice, because they didn't want to start at first level because they had all played, you know, 100 times before, and they wanted to start at like 5 or 7 or whatever it was. And so like, as a new guy wandering into like not first level 3.5, I was like, I am going to have fucked something up. So
when in doubt, be dark and brooding. That way part of your role playing is not talking to people.
Yep.
That's
why everyone picks the orphan rogue with a dark, mysterious past as their first character.
That was my first character.
Yes.
The rogue part. I was like a really creepy, like dark, brooding pirate. Like, I was a warlock. Like, don't talk to me. I'd like to just go slaughter some stuff and then take their heads. And not talk about it.
It takes a very special kind of person to play the flamboyant bard that sings at the table for their first game.
Right.
Yeah.
One of my tweets that really blew up, I was like comparing D&D characters from when I was 15 to when I was 30. When I was 15, all of my characters were a mysterious elf who was the secret heir to the throne and, you know, didn't have parents and was going to rise to greatness. And now, you know, my characters are a halfling barbarian who believes that the voice in his head, which is actually himself, is actually a deity, and he collects hats and chews on rocks. Like, let's do this, right?
Perfect.
And
that's great.
This is Sam the Barbarian. Oh, what's Sam short for? Because he's a halfling.
There's a fine line there. Like, I preach against weird for the sake of weird. Like, I have one player that loves taking like a weird character, like, I'm sorry, a weird race, and like sticking it into a weird class and giving it a weird background. Like, he played a high intelligence half-orc barbarian that wore like a monocle, and but he wasn't actually like smart. I think
he just thought he was smart.
He thought he was smart because he got struck by lightning.
Yeah.
And
that
so,
makes sense.
But the lightning gave him barbarian powers, but not brain powers.
And so I feel like that was right on the edge of like, okay, you're pushing the weird threshold. One or two more things, and this character is going to be a joke.
Also, he's got a Cockney accent. All right, shut it down. Shut it down. That's too much.
Oh, no.
All right, well, we are at 10 minutes to the hour, so we'll end, I guess, with what is the weirdest character that's everyone's played then, since we're talking about that. And that can be weird personality or weird in terms of like build. So what is everyone's weirdest RPG character?
Oh man.
I gotta think about this one.
I'll start. My
Okay.
first one was a Life Cleric, Warlock multiclass, Water Genasi, Warlock Cleric, Voodoo Witch Doctor Pirate.
Jesus, that's so many things.
Right?
As one does.
So I took all of the healing aspects of the Life Cleric and all of the like cursey aspects of being a Warlock and made it into like, you know, I themed it as a Witch Doctor. So he didn't walk over and, or it was a female, sorry. She didn't walk over and like white and yellow glowing energy comes out of her hands as she's healing, right? It was, oh, I got this, eat these 3 toad frogs and this herb and that will heal you. And so that's how everything was done. It was, I totally have something in my bag for this. And I would pull out, you know, garlic and like lizard teeth, and that was my healing spell. And then same thing for curses and stuff like that. But all my Eldritch Blast, all my healing spells, everything was flavored to be very nautical themed because it was a campaign on a boat. And so I didn't just have chill touch, like it was, you know, skeletal hand covered in seaweed and stuff came up out of the water and grabbed whoever, and that's what did the damage and slowed him down. But everything was reskinned to make this like weird Life Cleric fiend warlock multi-class be a bitchin' pirate lady.
I love everything about that.
Yeah,
That's great.
She was like
That's
the
my life
ship's
goal now.
she was the ship's quartermaster, so she was like the go between the all 20 NPCs that we had running the ship and the like adventurers who kept, you know, danger coming back to the ship in between missions. Like I was the go between the crew and stuff like that. And so I played off that with my warlock charisma and my clerical like healing abilities. But simultaneously my god and my warlock patron were basically the same thing, but it was the ocean. So it was actually the god of the ocean, but also like that superstitious Davy Jones locker kind of like scared of the deepness. And so she had all the like, you have to have a cat on the ship or the you know, will capsize. And so she had all of those things. And she was just, that's my weirdest character, was a hodgepodge of classes that shouldn't belong together, screaming about needing more mint leaves to do healing spells and make sure you have an orange tabby on the boat or we're going to flip.
So it wasn't my weirdest character, but just related to that, since you're talking about that kind of thing, we were planning some pirate adventures for a campaign we were doing last year or 2 years ago, something like that. And our striker, which I think is what you call the hunter on a boat that goes out and like fishes for sharks and stuff, was essentially the character you're describing, but he was skinned kind of like Baron Samedi, and he had the whole voodoo witch doctor thing going. I think he was a death cleric. So it's crazy that we had almost the same idea, but like switch slightly.
Pirate's life for me.
My actual weirdest character, I think, was just a bugbear that didn't speak common. And at one point, he took somebody's couch and he just carried it around. Yeah, he carried it around on his back like a backpack. Like I found straps for it. And so everywhere I went, even in combat, I had a 3-person couch on my back so that I could take it off my back and lay it down for our rest periods.
This sounds like a teenager character.
It sure was.
Some clown shoes D&D.
Yep.
I think my weirdest character, it is not weird. It's like it was a gnome wizard, which is like a pretty standard class race combo. But I think the weird part was I had no dark brooding background at all. She came from a very happy family of wizards, and she had like 19 siblings, and I named all of them.
Aww.
And it was just like no darkness in that background at all. Just like everything in my life has been fine, so let's go adventure. Like
I think that's what threw my the random group that I found on Reddit, I kind of threw them for a loop because many of them, it was their first characters, and they played through the starter set, and then they had a character drop right as they started Princes of the Apocalypse, and that's where I came in. I found the group on Reddit, but they were all new, dark, brooding characters, like to the point that one of them had a recommended name for their race from the player's handbook. Like that's how new this group was. Like, oh, here's a Goliath name. I'm going to use that one. But I joined as my wizard, and my wizard was like, every time we got back to town, I would write a note home to my parents and brother because like I had a family, but they were all like the brooding weird characters. And so we got to town, and I was like, I'm going to write a note home to let my parents know that I'm in Red Larch now. And they're all like, what?
What do you mean you know your father?
Yeah. I never knew my dad.
I did something similar. I think I invited, I believe that my family lived in Waterdeep and we were going to go there. And I'm like, oh, we can all stay with my family. And then I had to explain to them, I'm like, I'm really sorry, but like all of the rooms are 3-piece all. Like, you can stay with us, but you have to get low, but we'll also cook you dinner.
We're going to be in a hobbit hole, but also there are 16 people, so.
Yeah, there's 98 people that live in our house, so enjoy that.
Nice. All right, Emma.
So this is like a really hard question for me because I haven't actually, I mean, as a DM, I've made a tremendous number of characters, but as a player, I think I can count on my hands how many characters I've made.
It can be anything, though. It doesn't have to be weird personality. It can be a strange grouping of class and race, or just an odd habit. Like I said, collecting hats, or you know, having a voice in their head that they thought was a god. Like in that same Reddit group, I ended up running into a guy on Discord, I think, and inviting him to the game as we got into Tomb of Annihilation, and he played a gnome barbarian who thought he was a cleric, and the deity was the voice in his head, but he voiced the deity like Macho Man Randy Savage.
Oh my god.
So
that's amazing.
He lasted one session because his character died.
It was that much.
His character died by doing something. I don't want to spoil Tomb of Annihilation for anyone that's not played it yet, but he did something stupid and killed his rogue, and so he made that character, and literally the first session that character played in, it died too, and so
oh no.
he got locked in a room and drowned in blood, but you know, like you do.
Hey, yeah, that sounds like a Saturday to me. So I guess probably one of the weird, I don't know, there's not necessarily weird. All of mine are like really aggressively dramatic, I'm realizing, as I think even all the NPCs, like there's something real dramatic going on with them. And I think that like the warlock that I first made when I finally fleshed her character story out, she had she sent money to women's shelters throughout the land regularly, so she was always hungry to like get more money so that she could she didn't keep any of her money.
Right.
She would always send it away or donate it to like women's shelters and to women's cults and like all of that. And she it was that, and that went all the way back to her super dramatic like backstory and what happened to her as a kid. So and anytime that she saw like a child, she was constantly like, do you need money? Like, are you okay? And the rest of the time she was like really aggressive and gruff. But as soon as she was around young groups of kids, she was like, hey, how are you? And the rest of the time she's like, fuck off, don't talk to me.
It's just Valerie in real life.
The wizard, you reminded me, the wizard that would send notes home to his parents and stuff for that Princes of the Apocalypse game, he wanted to be that person. He wanted people to like see him as a like caring individual or whatever, but he was always like putting on that persona of a tough guy while out adventuring because he was literally a scholar who had got roped into trying to find his friend. And so he was so used to putting on that like, I'm a badass wizard, not I'm, a professor, that he kept running into, like, we would free prisoners and he would try to be like, I'm here to help you and stuff, and they would all be scared of him because he had just set 14 people on fire.
I'm here to help you.
But then the DM got the great idea to start doing the lingering injury table. So anytime we hit 0 hit points, we would roll on the table in the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Some of them are bad.
Some of them are bad.
They're
and I looked out
great.
and never getting any of bad ones like broken hands and stuff. But he ended up having 2 debilitating scars, which like murdered me on diplomacy checks and stuff like that. So like I would set 14 people on fire and then turn around to the Elvish girl prisoner and be like, I'm here to save you. But I took a war pick to the face.
Oh god.
Ow!
So I already had a -1 charisma because who needs charisma on a wizard? But then I had like disadvantage on diplomacy and persuasion and all those things. And so it wounded him that he kept trying to be like, how are you, little child? Who the hell are you? Get away from me.
Oh my god. That's gnarly.
But yeah. That's our 1 hour mark though. So if you guys want to wind down here, we'll go ahead and yeah. I had fun. Did you guys have fun?
I did.
This was great. Thank you.
Successfully pretended to be normal.
Yeah. And thank you, Emma and Variant Rolls, for letting us not have to mess with NDI Skype sources and stuff. It worked the whole time. No one's camera went off and changed sizes and all that stuff. So I'm glad my buddy Rick and I spent like 16 hours messing with Discord and Skype yesterday, but this worked. So I'm going to have to try this. I now know what to do when I get back from the desert and I want to do like an actual face cam RPG stream, one shots and stuff like that. So
which
Awesome.
we're doing in what, a week, 2 weeks for sure, 100%.
We're ready to go now. So if you want to wrap this up and we can start something else.
I mean, I got a Stranger Things game in like 2 hours, but vacation starts Monday, and aside from Monday night where I'm running a one shot, and Thursday through Saturday where the wife and I are going to go see the sequoias, I am down to do a one shot, and I'm also free next weekend. So if you guys want to play some D&D,
Let's do it.
I got some one shots, and y'all can play D&D, or y'all can wade into the Star Wars. I have the beginner box for Star Wars Fantasy Flight Edge of the Empire ready to go. So
Let's just do both. It's fine.
I mean, sure.
Simultaneously.
We'll
At the same time.
we'll play the D&D one shot, and then we'll take the characters and insert them into the Star Wars world and be like, laser guns.
I like it.
Perfect. That's perfect.
But I'm going to go ahead and kill the recording here. Cool.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.